So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services that we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzahelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end. Per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find a couple of layers of understanding on the 61st chapter of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As today we read then Yeshayahu as explains mostly the time of the end during the time of Yeshayahu himself and the future of the world of this age. We must understand what's going on in the world and the importance of reading the instructions outside of the Greco and Roman translation, so then we can understand precisely and definite what's coming in the very near future. There is a lot of debate going on because the leader of Germany went to Great Britain, and there was lots of talks going on and so on and so forth, and they are trying to join up their forces without regarding then the existing plan of the instructions. There is a problem. There are a couple of situations going on. Firstly, nobody's questioning the ability and the self-initiative of both countries. Nobody's questioning the ability. But let's try to understand what Daniel has said, since he was a tradesperson. He was a very important politician of his time, and he delineated very plainly the time of the restoration period and the time of the end of this age related with trade. Understandably, Daniel is directly related with the revelations of the time of the end and the prophets. Now, if you read from the Greco-Roman translation, you are as lost as a dog on a day of moving. If you take your time and you study the instructions from the original manuscripts, then you get a hold of it. The Creator does not complicate. He always makes it easier. But the humans outside of the instructions always try to build their own cisterns rather than trusting of the later rain. And you know what this means. Self-reliance is important. However, when we understand the instructions, self-reliance is dangerous. Let's verify what's going on. Daniel, the 2nd chapter. The king of Babylon had a dream, and he was scared to death because of it. He did not know what it meant, and his diviners, the scoundrels of his court, could not reveal it. And then the king imposed not only explaining the dream, but also interpreting without mentioning any of it. Then those diviner, the scoundrels, they were absolutely amazed, because no person during their time had ever taken the time and the nerve of asking such a question. And the king was firm: if you do not have the answer, you people are dead. And he was deadly serious, because the dream was extremely important. Daniel, he knew it, and he prayed, and he received the understanding. Let's try to understand then the base of this statue, where iron does not mix with clay. Understandably, nations are trying to come together and try to bring prosperity, making everybody as iron. Understandably, the king himself of Babylon tried to do in the 3rd chapter. I think it's part of the human nature, once the person is prosperous, trying to help other people. These would be the normal. But then most of the scoundrels of these days, they are more concerned of hiding the money than to try to helping other people. The world has a lot of wealth. Politicians, they spend more time trying to hide the money than giving them away. By legal means, obviously. So then, Daniel, the 2nd chapter. As we understand, the base of the statue relates with the time of the restoration period and the time of precision. We are during the Dragonic period. Devil does no longer exist. Doesn't exist anymore. If you lie, you have nothing to do with the devil. It's your own works, either your ignorance or you do by your own works. When you started in 2010, the devil simply has vanished. The spirit has become dragonic. So then, let's evaluate financial systems. Bitcoin, for example. A very short while ago, the CEO of the company went over there in Asia, around Japan, and was apologizing because of the problems related with the hackers going in the system. And then it was a blackout for a while. He apologized it and so on and so forth, and he wants to come up with some sort of bankruptcy insurance or some sort of protection because of this problem with the system. Bitcoin was generated by an Asian, quite interestingly. So then, what would be the proper course for the Bitcoin? It's very simple. Simply link up with China. Make a deal with China. Make the investments on products. And match up the value with the yen. So this was a given. So then, what can be done with the rest of it? Then in the 2nd chapter has stated that at the end, what then Daniel is making a reference of. Then at the end, nations would try then to come together, but they would not adhere to each other. Now, Daniel couldn't be any more explicit. Daniel was a tradesperson. He was explaining of trade. At the end, nations would try to come together under an existing system, yet they would not adhere to each other. Europe mounts 25% of the world's trade yet. Gotta be very smart that China holds mostly the rest of it. Now, if Europe wants more, knowing that China has more than 25%, then understandably, reading Daniel the 10th chapter, it's precisely regarding China, Kingdom of the East. In the 11th chapter, China plays a role amongst the other nations regarding the iron of the base of the statue. Great Britain has a very unique economy of its very own. Now, if they want to join up with those people that won't adhere to each other, go ahead. So then China later comes with a very nice surprise via internet, and then the nations won't adhere to each other. Those were not my words. So then, Bitcoin. Bitcoin was doing great. And it's absolutely scoundrelous trying to get some sort of insurance because of bankruptcy of some sort. The answer is China. Somehow, some way, with the certain technical aspects, as long as this company, the Bitcoin, joins up with China in having products via online and investments on products directly related with the financial system, then the company can continue on. You're probably familiar with eBay and Amazon and so many other sites, internet sites. Mostly you have a couple of steps. Firstly, then you log on, you find it in your site, you find the product, you purchase. Then the second step, you pay for it. Mostly is linked up with your banking. The third is simply investment. Now, Daniel was very explicit. He said knowledge would increase, and this knowledge is related with the trade. Yes, there are other kinds of knowledges, and mining, for instance, knowledge of the space, knowledge of the sea, knowledge of the earth. But when Daniel was explaining of knowledge, it was directly related with trade. This means computer. A system via computer, where then the freighters of the earth and the people would become joined up, and then they would do what people should be doing: work. Most politicians, they don't work. They only scratch their rears most of the day, play around with the computer, and then they go home and they get paid a lot of money. Because of most politicians are scoundrels, then the order was given. In order for the system to get cleaned up, You have to get rid of politicians. You have to have great stewards. Those people who are concise, simple, and do the work. Freighters. Obviously, you find then Revelation, you find Yeshayahu. You find then the freighters being the great ones of the earth. It's part of the prophecy. Freighters are then the great ones of the earth. What is the relation with the people and freighters? They're going to purchase with computers. And the volume must be great. Now, what is the link then with the financial system via computer and nations? Simply means taxes. The Savior was very in favor of paying taxes. He said, pay your taxes first, then do your spiritual duty. How do we understand of taxes? It's very simple. As you understand these financial, virtual money in a computer where you can purchase, simply understand the third step when the system comes. It is extremely simple. The main aim is get rid of politicians because most of them are lazy. Then the authority is obviously given when taxes are taken out of the system, because they become dependent upon taxes. And the system is becoming virtual, liking it or not. So then, it was said many times before, the world requires a linker yet. Each person making purchases via the system, then they must pay taxes instantly. And these taxes are taken out when then the freighter prints out the label. Instantly, taxes are taken out and sent via online. Goes straight to the government. In order for these then to flow very nicely, you have to have modules. There are people there around the world, they travel a lot via airplane, ship, you name it. And every time they go over the border, they must have another kind of module. It's a card. So you get the signal from the other country. They do trade with the other country so they can pay taxes. Now, since this is already resolved a long time ago, then comes the statue of the king of Babylon of the 3rd chapter. Did it work? During his lifetime, he thought it did. But truly it didn't. As we understand, we've come out of 1,000 years of deceit. It was not 10 years, 12 years, 20 years, 30 years, 100 years. It was 1,000. 1,000 years without the directives of the holy cities. And they are returning. Nations trying to come together and try to adhere to each other because they were so used to when they were born. They try to develop themselves and, get a diploma and go on and becoming a doctor and so on and so forth. Those are nice. But when we neglect the holy instructions for what they are and try to come up with the workings of our own, then there is a problem. The divine hand won't let. So then, Daniel, he was praying, he was fasting. Can you imagine Daniel the prophet fasting? He was absolutely disciplined of receiving an answer regarding the base of the statue. He didn't understand what it meant, iron and clay. He wanted knowledge of this iron. What nations would become iron? And as a tradesperson, he was receiving then earlier understandings, and during this time of the base he didn't understand. So then he became a person serious and began fasting. He felt in the spirit that the answer was there, but he had to do more of his own to sort it out. Try to understand. Sorting out the understanding. If you read the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, the 8th, 9th, up to this point it's somewhat straight. But if you read 10, 11, and 12, those are extremely complicated. The 11th particularly. So as Daniel was fasting, he was placing his flesh under the subjection of the weak area of fasting. That's when the flesh then relaxes. The desire of control and the mind. He became dependent. Then the understandings were given. Does it mean that the people are evil because they're trying to come together with coming up with some sort of plan of helping others? No, that's not the point. The point is, doing this and neglecting the instruction then becomes evil. As long as we do what we should be doing, working, understanding, and being responsible, it's fine. Neglecting the instructions is deadly. Simply because it won't work. What can we expect of China? Precisely what China is doing. People sometimes don't like it. Who's going to be the first of going up in heaven and having a talk with the Creator? So the English ways, they were very known throughout the world. The discoveries, the maritime recordings, and what he did. For instance, a particular captain, very famous during the time of the great discoveries, then later became other nations precise, and then they developed, then came wars, but then nations under a particular system would not adhere to each other. They won't, simply won't. They can try. Politicians are secondary. Great ones are the freighters. People make purchases, they work, they receive via computer, they buy, they spend, taxes are taken, and politicians, they are of no use. They are dead weight. Truly, when the freighters, they become again the great ones of the earth as per instructions, then a simple group of administrators simply are evolved with the basic services such as roads, water, electricity, and so on and so forth. And if they don't do the job, the freighters, they hire private companies to do the work. So have this in mind. At the end of time, nations will try, adhere to each other, but they would not. If you are a politician, head of state, read. Alright? Those are not my words. Those words came from heaven. Because God, He evaluates and He likes people that are responsible. Sure, He does. If you understand tabernacling, when it's a tabernacling related work, He does acknowledge. When there are Gentiles only involved, He's aware of it, but He's not interested in it. It's not part of His work. Does He know you are responsible? Sure, He does. What is the divine objective? Tabernacling. Tabernacling first, as per instructions. The place of the Messiah is in the Holy of Holies. Then the Gentiles are included in the plan, as they are obedient. Is the Creator interested in their salvation? Absolutely. If in turn they are interested in tabernacling. If it's only work and try to gather up other nations in trouble, the Creator can't mix Himself in it. Creator gave a specific path, and He won't ever violate what He has stated it under any condition. Yes, He is aware of, but He won't mix Himself. Then comes those people who are overly religious. Yeah, because if you have a family, because if you have then a job, then you are doing your duties before society, then God loves you. It's got nothing to do with the plan. These are the workings of their very own. Daniel. He had a very responsible life. After he received those understandings of the base of the statue, he wanted more. If you read the content of the 10th, 11th, and 12th, you can sense, because of the answer of the angel that was very abrupt, Daniel was trying to get a hold of the prophecies for himself. Human nature. Humans are subjected, when they get the forward motion, they try to control it. Then Daniel became excited and wanted to know more and more and more. The angel said, "Up, that's enough. Shut up the understandings of these, because for the time of the end." And Daniel said, "But I want to know." So then, at the end, nations will try to adhere to each other, but they would not. As we understand tabernacling, we know what this means. If we don't understand tabernacling, nations won't adhere to each other. That's the end of it. Please stay tuned.